Good morning, doctor. Welcome back.
Good morning, Venkatesh. Nice to be back.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'll just introduce the topic as always and then hand over to you.
Right.
So, like we discussed last time, we are sort of covering 3 or 4 sessions on the topic of emotional intelligence. And as part of that, we are going to talk about something very important, which is self awareness. It is only when we are aware of ourselves, our emotions, and our own characteristics that we are in a position to manage ourselves and manage our relationships with others well. And that's the reason it's part of this series on wellness, because that's central to how we manage our relationships, ourselves, and our wellness, our mental wellness in particular. Yeah. With that, doctor, I hand over to you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Venkatesh, once again. Now
Right.
we are set to enter this era, domain of awareness.
Right.
Now, awareness is something that not too many people understand or appreciate,
Right.
And awareness is connected to knowledge, and then you'll say somebody is very knowledgeable and stuff like that. But that doesn't really mean that the person is aware of himself and his surroundings and his environments.
Right.
And that awareness is something that is deeper.
Right.
Knowledge alone is not going to create awareness for you, but
Right.
awareness is more holistic and more comprehensive. And awareness has to be respected also. Awareness is something not everybody can see all the time. And but it indicates a level of maturity and even a touch of philosophy. So awareness is more comprehensive term. We should know more about awareness, particularly of our own. So that's why we say self-awareness. Now you can say that in worldly matters, in material things, I know this, this I know kind of thing. You go ask any educated man, he could be a PhD or whatever. His first thing he would say is, I know.
Right.
That itself is a little denial of the full awareness. So let us see more of how this awareness goes about. Okay. Now, awareness, if you are aware of something, you tom-tom about it. Basically, if you know something, you shout from the rooftop that you know.
Right.
So that is also sort of a modification or a variant of awareness. And we are going to look at awareness more deep down. So that's why we say self-awareness. And self-awareness is, again, let me repeat, self-awareness could be a misleading term, especially to the ignoramus or the persons who are not fully aware of the thought processes. But it's important that we talk about it. So self-awareness is yeah. Any comment, Venku?
No, I think a very good point you made in the passing, but I think it's an important one before we move to self awareness. Is that if you are aware of anything, you will be aware of the fact that you don't know everything. And so, like you said, when someone says that I know, and sort of if you have that sort of know it all with respect to anything, including yourself, it by definition means you aren't self aware. Because one of the important parts of being aware is to know that you can't be aware of everything.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. So now we move to self-awareness. Yes, doctor.
Yeah. Now, self-awareness has been studied by psychologists and philosophers and metaphysicists also, but one particular entity called open or whatever, open versus closed, hidden versus unknown, etc. This will have to be understood in the context of modern psychology.
Right.
Now, there's a thing called Johari windows.
Right.
Johari is a term formed by combining the first names of the scientists or the philosophers.
Right.
And first name of that kind is John, something.
Right.
And the second one is Hari. It's not Hari of our Vaishnava tradition. It is Hari.
Right.
And Joe and Harry were put together to create this entity of Johari window. Now, this is a window to one's awareness, window to what is visible and what is knowledgeable, etc., etc. It's a window. It is not a full door open. To understand this, the very mention of window means that there is a lot of unknown, unexpected things happening there. So that is something we have to look at.
Right.
And there are 4 quadrants here.
Right.
This quadrant concept is very common in psychology and even
Right.
philosophy. Now, in this diagram, you'll see if you have if you know your own self, yeah,
Correct.
and if you are open to that,
Correct.
you are open your own self to anybody who wants to know. Supposing, for
Right.
instance, you want to catch a bus at 8:30,
Correct.
at 8:30, you'll have to catch the bus. The bus driver would know, the
Right.
bus stand fellows would know, and they all would know what is open about the whole thing, open self.
Correct.
The other stream of that is not known to anybody at all.
Right.
The left hand top is open to everybody,
Right.
and right hand bottom portion is unknown to anybody,
Correct.
unknown to everybody and anybody, and it's a completely dark area.
Correct.
Yeah. In between come these, there is fairly, argument or controversy about open self and unknown self. And
Right.
so unknown is a little philosophical, but that's good enough. You don't know, and the other guys don't know at all. So
Correct.
these 2 quadrants can be sort of put aside to
Right.
look at the other quadrants. Yeah, any comments, Venku?
No, why don't you complete the other two and then I'll make
Yeah, right. That's what I got. Now, there is something called blind self and there is something called hidden self.
Correct.
Blind is something you don't know, you are blind.
Correct.
Hidden is something you are hiding. It's simple,
Right.
very simple.
Correct.
You are hiding something that is hidden self, and
Correct.
you are blind to something, it is blind self. So
Correct.
you got 4 quadrants completed. Any comment now?
Yes, yes. So these are actually, I think it's always been a very fascinating. I was first exposed to this 25 years ago in our management studies, and it's actually one of the most powerful things that has remained fixed. Like you said, the two that we have to bother quite about is the blind self and the hidden self. And for self-awareness, the most important might be actually the blind self, which is things
Right.
we don't know about ourselves, but others know, right? And
Right.
very often we think we are a particular way, but if you take feedback from other people or you ask your loved ones or you ask your colleagues, they have a view of you which is quite different from your own view of yourself. And that is where we have to work on improving our awareness of ourselves. The hidden part is sort of more, we know about it, but we have sort of kept it hidden from others. And, while one can argue in theory that there should be nothing hidden, it's not possible, right? All of us do have things that we keep to ourselves and we don't share. But I think in this entire set of discussions, in these 4 quadrants in our discussion today, I think the blind self and the unknown self, which is things we don't know about ourselves, how do we become a little more aware of that? Is that really the crux of our topic today? Yes, doctor?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And by the way, this concept of Johari windows,
Right.
it's a little outdated today because today's psychologists don't use Johari window as such, but it is still very relevant. It's like Bhagavad Gita, which is in the new millennium.
No, I think just the fact that something is old and people aren't talking about it all the time doesn't mean it's outdated. I think
exactly.
there are passing fads sometimes about what captures the public imagination. But I think this one has stood the test of time in terms of it's a very sensible way of looking at improving oneself. And to that extent, I think it remains very, very relevant.
Yeah. And it teaches you humility also. You should know that there is something that you don't know.
Yes. In fact, that's the most important thing. Correct.
I know everything, kind of thing. So anyway, we need not spend too much time now on this because these 4 quadrants of Johari window are available anywhere. And as and when required, we'll do.
Yeah, I think it sets the whole discussion up. It's a very important place to have spent some time, doctor, because like you said, the first step in self-awareness is to know that we don't know everything about ourselves. The common misconception is, I know me at least. I may not know anything else, but I know myself. But nothing could be further from the truth, right? Very often, without a lot of reflection and thought, we don't know ourselves. We know a lot about others maybe, but we don't know about ourselves. That's very difficult and tricky. Which brings us, I guess, to the next slide. Yeah.
In Hindi, there is a saying, Chirag tale andhera. Under the light, darkness. That is right under your nose. As they say, you can't see the tip of your own nose. How many people can see the tip? So
very good one. Yes, absolutely.
It happens there. Yeah. So Chirag Tale Andhera,
Correct.
Deep Tale Andhera, and
Correct.
in English it is under your own nose.
Correct.
And there are
Hidden
lots
in
of
plain
points of
sight and so on.
yeah,
Correct.
right. So in this context, we are going to look at a little more about an entity called Atma Jnana. Atma is self.
Right.
Now, self-knowledge, self-awareness is Atma Jnana. And Atma, if you say Atma Jnana, people will say, oh my God, it's very intimidating. But
Right.
if you say self-awareness, the intimidation is slightly less. But still,
Correct.
it is very much there. And if you know what is Atma Jnana, then you are not only a good psychologist or a good person, but
Right.
you are also a good philosopher, and
Right.
we will simply be seeing that. So Atma
Right.
Jnana is something that is relevant today, and it is relevant 24 by 7.
Right.
It's not that you'll have Atma Jnana and at 2:30 in the afternoon you won't have Atma Jnana. So it is. So Atma Jnana is something that has to be respected and practiced to the extent we
Right.
can.
Right.
So many rishis and munis and seers and Vedanta experts and so forth talk about Atmagyan in a very nice way.
Right.
For example, an example of Ramana Maharshi of I think
Yes,
forget the
Ramana
name of
Maharishi is a very well known. Yes, correct.
yeah, but the name there is a hill on that Tiruvannamalai is the name of the place, and there is
Right.
a hill there. Namalai
Right.
is that, and he stays there. He used to stay there. He's no more,
Right.
and he teaches very nicely how Atmagyan would mean. And
Right.
I once listened to the full lecture of his, 60
Right.
minutes plus, and I was thoroughly impressed. He's from
Right.
Kerala, so forget the accent part of it, but otherwise his diction and delivery are extremely good. And
Right.
there are volumes and volumes written on these concepts in Hinduism
Yes.
or
Yes.
Indianism, if you like, or Bharat psychology, philosophy. And what does it mean really? Yeah, let's
Yes.
take a look. Yeah, next slide. Any comments, Venkatesh?
No. Let's go on. Yeah.
Yeah, now there is an English equivalent, there is a management equivalent, which
Right.
says SWOT, SWOT.
Right.
And this is practice in management because, again, it's a concept of hidden versus hidden and blind and stuff like that. It is here in slightly different terminology.
Right.
For example, you know yourself and you are very good. Like Tendulkar knows, I know my batting. Nobody needs to teach me batting. I know my batting. Shane Warne would say, I know my bowling. So
Right.
these are areas of strength which have to be respected and grown. In
Right.
the sense, not CROAN, it is grown CROWN.
Right.
So they grow these traits,
Right.
and you have to know the strengths of yourself. By doing all this in a very systematic way, you will know your strength.
Right.
And if you know strength, you know what to say and what not to say, and what to do and what not to do. Hmm?
Right.
They say in Vedanta, kim vachaniyam, kima vachaniyam, like that. Kim bhoktavyam, kima bhoktavyam, like that. So
Right.
that teaches you where to stick your neck out or where to keep quiet, like
Correct.
that.
Correct.
And the other one, next one is opposite of strength is weakness.
Correct.
Hmm? Has to be an antipode somewhere which
Right.
should counter this. So
Right.
anything then that weakness, strength is weakness. You are
Correct.
not good. You are weak.
Right.
And that is within yourself. Now, outside world presents a few things in a different light. In
Right.
outside world, you have got opportunities waiting at this very moment. Supposing you are sitting on a gold mine, and if you are just ignoring that gold mine, then
Correct.
you are not doing justice to your opportunities. You are wasting your efforts.
Correct.
And the opposite that is threat. Yeah.
Correct.
Opposite. Yeah. So this SWOT is something called SWOT analysis, which was
Right.
brought into management quite a few years ago.
Right.
But nobody really tom-toms about SWOT because again, the things come in fashion,
Right.
including psychology, nuclear physics, and so forth. So it is still relevant. Like Stephen Covey's the 7 habits are still relevant,
Correct.
and so forth.
Correct. Yeah.
So this is when you know your strength. So that is a part of self-knowledge.
Right.
Part of self-knowledge.
Correct.
For something may sound very stupid. The same Ramana Maharshi is not going to stick his hand out into a flame, and you are just being ignorant, or you can't say that I know what I'm doing, and therefore I'm putting my hand onto the flame.
Right.
Whereas down to earth practical man would say, okay, you may be a Ramana Maharshi, but your hand will get burnt, and so
Correct.
forth. These are mixtures of behavior and knowledge together. So
Right.
SWOT analysis is a vital element of your self-analysis, self-consciousness or conscience.
Right.
So this will to incorporate this into your day-to-day thinking. So the
Right.
important thing to incorporate all these elements into your thinking or thought process.
Correct.
And if your thought process is healthy, then you go ahead in life. Otherwise, you are stuck. Any comment, Venkatesh?
Yes. No, so I think this is a good point to make here, that self-awareness sounds like a very big, or even Atma Gyan sounds like a very sort of amorphous and intimidating concept. But
Right,
starting with something tangible like SWOT gives us a way to start analyzing ourselves. So SWOT
right,
really quite often gives us a way to think about ourselves. And this SWOT can be at many levels. It can be with respect to our capabilities at work, but we can do a SWOT on anything. We can do a SWOT of ourselves as a father, as a son, as a brother, as a colleague. And if you think about it that way, it gives you a way to start analyzing yourself and know that for sure you will not only have strengths and you will not only have weaknesses. You will not only have threats and you will not only have opportunities. You'll have a mix in all of them, and that itself
right.
makes you open to understanding yourself better. So that's how I see SWOT. It need not be only in management terms. It's something that just gives us a good way to start analyzing ourselves.
Right. So it's a disciplined way of studying yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
So today, if you take a broad overview of whatever is happening in the world,
Right.
yeah, we sort of bring ourselves to understanding two types of intelligences.
Correct.
One is IQ, which is cognitive IQ, where you're aware of certain. And the other one is EQ, or emotive quadrant,
Emotional
quality.
quotient. Correct.
Yeah, emotional quotient. So we know by and large what is cognitive IQ and what is emotive EQ. And
Right.
this has now sort of rubbed into the psychology of students and scholars. Most people think that the whole world can be deciphered just through IQ and EQ.
Right.
And this is where the problem arises. There are people who would say, I know my IQ and I know my EQ, so I know the world. I know the world inside out, outside in. So this used to be the thinking, but now think there's slightly different things have started happening, particularly with nuclear physics and all that. We mentioned about it in some other context some time ago. We say not everything can be sort of manifested as
or explained by what we already know. Yes.
Yeah. Coined, and then you can count it. You can give a figure to IQ. In modern science, one always demands a number.
Right.
What is IQ? You have to say 76. What is your EQ? 120. We are very happy with numbers. And that keeps the other fellow also shut up, because you can see this in all TV programs. There are people who are throwing numbers left, right, and center and shouting at each other, and they get a number. So the number is comforting to them that I am making a great point. I am a scholar. I am a knowledgeable guy. Whereas
and it is tangible. Just because there is a number, it becomes tangible. Can be an illusion.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So
it's the illusion of tangibility. Correct.
Absolutely. Over and above that is the next one. Next slide, please. Under self-awareness, you will see that not everything can be boiled down to IQ and EQ. There is something more purpose than these two. Yeah. Here, there is one slide which I picked up from the internet.
Right.
So self-awareness can be internal or external.
Right.
And internal self-awareness is on your own. You are able to be aware of things. Is how we see our own
emotions or thoughts and so on. Correct.
I get blinded with this slide.
Yeah. I think external self-awareness, just to maybe connect the dots, since I know the font is a little small for you. I think external self-awareness is how others see us.
Others are seeing.
Yes. And internal self-awareness is.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Johari
doctor.
window.
Yeah.
Johari window is also under the same schema of things.
Correct.
So external, internal, you know.
So to connect the
hidden,
dots with what we just discussed, I think
yeah,
external self-awareness, when we talked about, the two things we are not that aware of, right? Which is our
right,
hidden self, which is we ourselves don't know about ourselves. And the other is the blind self where others know, but we don't know. These two
right,
ways of looking at self-awareness is useful. One, which is the blind side, it is useful to ask others what they think about us so that we can get a view of how others perceive our strengths and weaknesses or opportunities and threats. And that will give us an angle or a perspective we can't have on our own. The internal
right,
one tackles the part that others can't know, right? So it is about uncovering the hidden part, because the internal awareness is the one that will address things that the others don't know and we also don't know. So for both, we need
right,
study, right? The external part helps us, external self-awareness or the work on that is about getting feedback, right? So that the blind part of the window sort of shrinks. And internal
right.
self-awareness is shrinking the hidden part where even we don't know and others also don't know. So that's, I guess, the significance of this line.
Yeah. True, very true. Now, there is an element of emotion attached to all this.
Yes.
There is anything and everything under the sun is emotional. There are
Correct.
people who, the strongest president of the United States will take his decisions in the morning based not on facts and figures, but on emotion.
Correct.
So will feel happy if I do this, and so will be unhappy if I do that. That is the
Correct.
basis of the decision making,
Correct.
and that is really quantitative. We don't, quantitative things will say, qualitative will have to be complementing that. Like,
Correct.
Richard Nixon was president of the United States,
Right.
who took America to the war zone, in Vietnam. And he kept on bombing and bombarding Vietnamese and Cambodian forests. They wanted
Right.
to destroy the forest so they can see the movement of troops. The
Right.
leaves were blocking the troops. So that fellow said, I will.
Yes. Yeah.
I will see to it that the entire foliage of the forests in Vietnam are destroyed.
Right.
And people, nonsense, working against nature. But he
Right.
said, no, I have made up my mind. Don't confuse me with facts. This is a very famous statement of Richard
Yes.
Nixon.
Right.
Things. I have made up my mind, which is on qualitative thing, mind you. I have made up my mind based on qualitative. He is not interested in statistics.
Correct.
Don't confuse me with facts. No, he said, if you give me numbers, you'll confuse me. So
Correct.
don't give me numbers. Simply
Correct.
say so and so, good, bad, which modern day management experts allow. For example, today, every slide, every presentation, every thought process is
Right.
quantitative.
Right.
And if you cannot quantify or quantitate that, it's not worth it. So you throw it out.
Right.
It's not right to throw it out. It's important to understand it.
Correct.
So how
Correct.
to convert qualitative into quantitative for decision making, etc. That's a different management issue. But you have to be aware of the emotional element,
Yes.
because
I think that is the
that will
most important point. Correct.
yeah, that will be the emotional awareness is the single most important element in day-to-day living.
Correct.
That's some
Yes.
simple thing, putting salt on the whatever bhaji or
Yeah. No, in fact, it is, in fact, the most important reason why I think we should be talking about emotional self-awareness is when we talk of self-awareness, the biggest barrier to it is our own emotions. It is very difficult to examine ourselves because automatically emotions come in the way of even examining ourselves, our own perception of ourselves. If we don't want to disturb it, right? If we, for example, if we have some particular view of ourselves as being strong or intelligent or fair, and then we have certain things where we can see it is not so, it is very uncomfortable, right? And in that sense, while it is very important to be aware of emotions, one also has to know that emotions are the single biggest reason why we can't be self-aware, right? Or why we can't claim complete self-awareness, because our emotions will get in the way.
Absolutely. Good, true. So emotional awareness is there. And there is another slide which I picked up. Talked about 3 Qs, quotients,
Correct.
And IQ is a cognitive intelligence quotient, which is easy to see right from kindergarten. The teacher will tell you your son is 80% this and 25% of that, and it's all that stuff. And it is all figures.
Correct.
So if you don't get, even we glorify the examination marks. In the examination, if you don't get 85 out of 100 or 95 out of 100, you are considered to be dumb.
Correct.
Whereas, as the examples will go, Thomas Alva Edison quit the school. Edison's mother said, teachers don't know what you're doing. So she took away Edison and then see what Edison discovered and worked on. So it's IQ, EQ, and SQ. Now, Edison's mother was a far cry from the other goings on in any academic institution. But academia primarily keeps hammering on numbers and figures, and that's not really the thing. But doesn't mean that we can dispense with them.
Correct.
It has its own role. So here is a formula. IQ, EQ, and SQ. IQ is intelligence quotient, which again, examination. How much did you get in mathematics? 45. How much did you get in geography? 78 or something. Fairly straightforward. And that is where in this diagram, you see the word intellectual quotient, which may be argued upon. Intelligence quotient is intellectual is a little abstract again. You should avoid abstract at that level. So IQ is intellectual according to them. And EQ is emotional quotient, which Daniel Goleman and many others keep floating around. And the new element of a spiritual quotient was brought in by psychologists.
Right.
The concept of emotional, spiritual intelligence. Spiritual intelligence is coming up more recently, and qualitative decisions are taken involving millions and billions of dollars. The perception. What is perception? What is the word perception itself is so ambiguous, but it's so powerful. So if you have spiritual okay and spiritual not okay, and decision-making people are looking at it that way, then the power of the spiritual element will be appreciated. The emotional quotient, again, Daniel Goleman has crystallized everything, although he could never do it the way IQ was.
Right. Because it is very difficult. That's why there is no EQ score, right? I mean, there is an IQ score. Just a time check. I guess we will have maybe about 10 minutes more. Just 10 or maybe 12 minutes more. So one thought as we move on to, I guess, the next part is that the spiritual we have discussed across many of our sessions. The spiritual comes in because a belief in either sort of a universal soul or a way of looking at things, the Atma, or different religions call it different things, is a way in which we can manage our emotions as well. And why we have discussed across so much, from the very first talk, we talked about the reason there is a need for faith. There is a need for a set of belief systems that allow us to manage our emotions and manage ourselves. And that is, I guess, why the spiritual comes in. Why it is not just emotions and why it is not just intellectual. So that is one point that sort of I wanted to connect the dots. And the second is, while we've been talking about quantitative, the limits of quantitative, even here, there is a tendency to put a mathematical formula that SQ is equal to IQ plus EQ. I mean, there is, I guess that's how we like to think about things, or, it just gives us comfort to think that there is some formula for things. Yes, right. Let's move on. I guess we have 10 minutes more.
So now we are getting into the abstract areas of mind and stuff like that. Now, there is an element of intelligence here, something called spiritual intelligence, which you just saw. And it is a adhyatmic thought process. Adhyatma is inner whatever. Philosophy again. The word philosophy is intimidating again. But philosophically, you have to look at your own thought process, and you have to look at your own intellect. Your intellect is beyond philosophy. Getting a bit thick, but
no, it's not. I think in fact that's a point we've been making, Doctor, across the last many talks. that,
Yeah.
far from being an impractical vague thought, spirituality is not some, completely theoretical, non-practical construct. It is something that we actually very much have as part of our lives. And only when we think that there is something beyond ourselves and, have some kind of a view on that, are we able to manage the uncertainty and, all the problems of day-to-day life. So I think it's a very tangible, finally, it's a very practical thing, right? I mean, that's why
Yeah.
it's been there for so long.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Because the SQ that we are talking about was coined by Zohar and Marshall, the husband and wife team from the
Right.
United States.
Correct.
And they created this entity.
Correct.
And they said spiritual intelligence is this. And they
Correct.
can give a formula, because to be heard and to be understood or to be respected, you need figures. And that will keep on happening in every walk of life. So according to them, Adhyatmik Buddhimatta is intellect, the ultimate intelligence is that. And this is Zohar and Marshall's reference, SQ reference. Next slide, please. Now, in Hindu way of thinking, there is the ultimate in philosophy called Aham Brahmasmi. Aham means I, me.
Correct.
Brahma is the supreme God without any form or emotions or anything. And I am that. The moment you say that, some people will laugh. Like the place where I give interactive sessions of late. The moment you say philosophy, they laugh. The moment they say Brahma, they laugh. And they'll keep laughing. But there are one or two guys in the crowd who will say, okay, let me think about it. What is it? Like that. But the world doesn't revolve only around that. But you have to know that Aham Brahmasmi is a vital concept towards which one has to work. And that is the ultimate, the pinnacle of I call it philosophy. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
And it is coming under as divine revelation. Now, Aham Brahmasmi, you and I can't go and say, I went to the other market and I got this Aham Brahmasmi for X number of kilograms or something. And some divine revelation has to happen. And that divine element, divine power will have to guide you through your ways of living itself, the very art of living. So that takes it over there. Maybe we'll have a separate session later on this.
Correct.
Next slide.
Yeah.
Now here you see Gautam Buddha sitting in the Bodhi tree and arriving at the same conclusion.
Right.
He diagnosed ultimately all human suffering is because of desire, because of wanting. And if you eliminate wanting, your philosophy, your personal philosophy is achieved and so forth. Next slide, please.
I think we can move to this because the other one is a repetition, which is of, unless you had a thought here. Because I guess again, IQ, SQ, EQ.
IQ, SQ, EQ, yeah.
So this brings us to the last slide. So maybe we can spend a minute.
Very briefly.
No, we have time. Now we have time. So you can spend a moment on this one properly.
This is the last one. The Hindu philosophy is fine, but it is one of the 4 diktats or 4 commandments, if you like, which say Prajnanam Brahma, Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, and I am Atma Brahma. Very briefly, this is putting the whole element of philosophy into I am Atma, I am my own soul. It sounds a little odd, but if you go through the various steps of these 4 Mahavakyas, little amount, you'll come to a little bit of enlightenment. Aham Brahmasmi is them. And Prajnanam Brahma is Jnana, the awareness, self-awareness, self-consciousness. Brahmasmi is what we saw just now. I am this. Tattvamasi, thou art you are that. Thou art that.
Yes.
Yeah. Tattvamasi. And I am Atma Brahma. So whatever is there in me is Atma, and I am Atma, I am Brahma, like that. So it is leading to the logic of that. It's a little bit of not so easy to grasp, but if you live through this, you'll appreciate all the 4 elements have their place. And Aham Brahmasmi is the pinnacle of personal philosophy. So that is awareness to the extreme. Yeah. So
no, absolutely. I think it's a very important point as we conclude. I in fact start with the last section that we slightly had to rush through. I think the spiritual quotient and how it connects to, whether it is divine revelation or let's say for, the concept of enlightenment, right? What you said, Buddha sat under a tree and then he had enlightenment. It's about, I think, one further level of depth of self-awareness is to know that at some level there are things beyond any one of us as an individual, but at another level, it is common across all of us, right? That's what we, in a different talk, if you remember, I discussed these 4 lines itself, when we had
Right,
discussed the concept of Atma and the soul, and saying
right,
that as much as I need to know me, I need to know that, there is one thing common across all of us. And that common across all of us, you can call it, Brahma, or, the universe is
right,
inside all of us. It's
right,
why spiritual quotient has a place, right? That actually, as much as we try to study ourselves, and there'll always be a blind part of studying ourselves, there'll always be a hidden part that nobody else can also guide us on. But that's where the spiritual part can help us, right? That there is something that is common across all of us where I don't need to worry about or try to do some fundamental research on, am I different on those? Unlikely. All of us are very, all of us have these universal things in us. And so to conclude, we talked about SQ in the end, which is what I just discussed. But we talked about why, starting with Johari window, self-awareness is first and foremost about having the humility to know we don't know everything about ourselves, using practical things like a SWOT to be able to study ourselves. It gives us a nice hook, right? It sounds like a management term, but we can do it for every, we can do it even for our emotions. Do I get angry
right,
easily? Am I kind? What is it that I generally do? So that analysis is useful to do. And using that, we understand that, finally, our emotions are some of the strongest things that affect us. In fact, Doc, since you mentioned that quantitative, everyone is obsessed with quantitative. In our, I'm from the finance line. One of the interesting things is that one of the most recent subjects is something called behavioral finance, right? That
mm,
even something as tangible as money and finance, since it's so
mm,
entangled with emotions,
yeah,
very often, like you said, the decisions, Richard Nixon said it straight out. But for many of us, actually, our decisions are all linked to our emotions. So there's a whole
right,
study in finance, which one would have thought is only numbers, about how emotions affect our financial decision making.
right.
So self-awareness spans all of these. I thought I will summarize, Doctor. Does that
Good.
make sense? Any closing
Yeah,
thoughts?
absolutely. And good summary as usual. So
Thank
follow
you.
it up next week, next time.
Yes. So look forward to the next one. It'll be part of this continuing emphasis on emotional quotient and managing ourselves. So next time we'll talk about self-regulation and self-management. Uh, and so that's the next one that we'll talk about. Yes. Thank
Right,
you,
right.
Doctor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.